That's what you have to do.
That's how they get the power, because we didn't vote, and a vote, a no vote is still a vote. This is a vote for the opposition. The very person you didn't want, gets a vote because you didn't do it. So we're going to have to convince our people that they're going to have to get out and vote. The 13, 14, and 15 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, known as the Reconstruction Amendments. That's right after the Civil War. They were enacted after the Civil War to end slavery. 13th Amendment, now remember that, to end slavery. And define citizenship and grant equal protection under the law. That was the 14th Amendment. Define citizenship and grant equal protection under the law. 14th Amendment. They don't want us to have any equal protection under the law. And these people have been fighting these amendments forever. And it seems like they're getting the upper hand now because they're controlling the Supreme Court, they're controlling the legislature, and they have the White House. And prohibit racial discrimination in voting. That's your 15th Amendment. And they call this the forgotten history, stems from the immediate post-Reconstruction era, because right after this, we noticed that we were in the era of Jim Crow laws. And that created a system of segregation and denied the very rights that the 13, 14, and 15 amendments were intended to secure, leading to a long struggle to fully realize their promise. The 13th Amendment was in 1865. What it did, it abolished slavery and involuntary servitude throughout the United States. Why it was needed. Although President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves in certain Union-controlled areas, the institution of slavery was still legal elsewhere. The amendment was necessary to permanently end slavery across the nation. But somebody didn't like that. The 14th Amendment was in 1868. What did it do? And we went through that again. It defined citizenship. For all persons born or naturalized in the United States, granted equal protection under the law, and prohibited the states from infringing on fundamental rights without due process. And what are we dealing with now, right now? They could not infringe on fundamental rights without due process. And we're looking at what's happening to immigrants. They're deporting them without due process. But they weren't supposed to infringe on their fundamental rights without due process. But they're able to get away with it, though, because who was voted in office. And incidentally, the president did not get 50% of the votes. They don't talk about that. But he did not get 50% of the votes. The 15th Amendment was in 1870. I mean, what did it do? It prohibited the denial of abridgment of a citizen's right to vote on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So what they do, that to get around this, they will say anything, it's not race that we're talking about, not color, anything. So they come up with some flimsy excuse and say that's why they are doing this. So they're saying they're criminals. Anything. So we have to look at these excuses that they're using to keep people from voting, to keep people from being staying in the United States. Why was that 15th Amendment needed? It aimed to guarantee voting rights for African American men, who had been previously disenfranchised. Why their history is forgotten, the backlash from Jim Crow, and we still looking at backlashes from Jim Crow. The initial period of expanded freedom quickly deteriorated. Southern states enacted their Jim Crow, establishing a system of racial discrimination and disenfranchisement that undermined the spirit and intent of the amendment. We had the amendments against it, but they were steadily fighting, still fighting the Civil War. And there was an erosion of our rights. African Americans were subjected to new forms of oppression, resembling the slavery the amendments were designed to eliminate. Everything is designed to take away those rights that were given to us. The continued struggle is what we're looking at today. The fight to enhance the full protection of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments would continue for decades, requiring the civil rights movement and a subsequent legislation to ensure their ideals were applied to all Americans. But then Carol Anderson came up with one person, no vote. And I said, what? It's supposed to be one person, one vote. She said, no, it's one person, no vote. And that's in her book, and it 2018 book. One person, no vote. How voter suppression is destroying our democracy. The book examines the history of modern practice of voter suppression in the United States. Key points about the book. The book was written following the 2013 Supreme Court decision in Shelby County versus Holder, which eliminated the federal oversight of voting law changes in states with a history of discrimination. So, what are we dealing with now? We're dealing with voter suppression. And the voter suppression was designed to change they eliminated the federal oversight over what those states were doing with the voting laws. That's what they did. Anderson argued that this decision unleashed a wave of discriminatory voting laws, and we are dealing with them right now. We are dealing with them. What did they do? They imposed strict voter ID requirements, and we're going to be talking about that. So one of our other Sci-Fair chapter members will be talking about that. They also another tactic where they were methods used to disenfranchise certain voters, particularly African Americans and other minorities. The gerrymandering. Are we dealing with gerrymandering? Yes. Look at what just happened and what's happening. And when we're getting into a gerrymandering war because of Governor Gavin Newsom that went against what was happening here in Texas, and the president calls the governor of Texas and tell him, I need 5 seats, redistrict so we can get those 5 seats. So gerrymandering is interchangeable with redistricting. Then we have the poll closures, especially in minority heavy districts. Have you noticed we had lots of polls open during the Biden administration, but now what's going on? We have fewer polls open, and it's difficult for certain people to get to the polls, and all of these things are part of this voter suppression that's going on. And then we have purging voter rolls, and how many millions of voters were dropped from the rolls because our governor purged the rolls of our voters. And people who are eligible to vote, need to check their voter registration because they could have been purged.
So this is a good time to come to 400 North Sam Houston Parkway and do, Houston, Texas, 77060. We have volunteers downstairs waiting to get you signed up to vote.
Thank you. So if you have not registered to vote, come over here. Come downstairs here, or you can come inside to the fourth floor conference room and get your voter registration application here. But you need to register. There was some arguments. Anderson's work presents the argument that these tactics are often framed, and we hear it every day. These voter suppression acts, now they're designed to keep you from voting, but what do they say? They say they are measures to prevent voter fraud. It says to promote voter fraud, but in fact they are pernicious, racist, and class-based attempts to undermine democracy, and especially to keep us from voting. Related work, she has other books, but we need to look at the phrase "one person, no vote" is a direct contrast to the American legal principle of one person, one vote, which holds that each person's voting power should be roughly equal. And so we have other members of this political awareness committee that will be talking about some of these tactics that we have, the voter suppression tactics. And we also have, because the big thing they came up, the strict voter ID requirement, that's the one that really gets you. You go to the polls and you don't have the voter ID, the proper ID, and so you have to take a provisional vote or something like that. But we're going to be someone else will be talking about that. So it's very important that we get out and vote. And in case you didn't know it, if you having trouble walking, some kind of disability, and they're trying to get rid of the mail-in ballot, which most of us use, a lot of us use, especially if you had some kind of disability. But you can get in your car or have someone drive you to the poll and look for the sign that says curbside voting. Curbside voting. It's been there forever, but very few of us use it. So go directly to the poll, push that little button, and somebody will come out and bring you the ballot. You don't have to mail in your ballot. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can go to the polls and vote. And you know that your vote is, and you know that you have voted, and you know that it's supposed to be counted. But it's more important than ever. And people talking about, certain groups cause the problem. LGBTQ, the LGBTQ people are not the ones that's causing us to have problems voting. They are not the ones that fired us from our jobs, calling us DEIs. And it's certainly not the black folk. The black folk didn't do it. The black folk are called in the DEI thing. And you know that the immigrants didn't do it, because the immigrants are being deployed. Well, rather deported. They're being deported and might not be deported to the country that they're originally from. And believe it or not, the same thing can happen to us because we don't have a strong legislation branch of government anymore. We don't have a strong judicial branch of government anymore. So who's going to help us? It's just time for the people to get together. We're going to help each other, working class people, because the billionaires, they're the ones that are benefiting from all of this. If you notice, the working class people, and you have to cross color barriers. We're in the same boat. Your complexion might be different from mine, but you're getting laid off just like I'm getting, people like me are getting laid off. Your people are getting deported, and they could deport my people too, right along with you. So it's very important that we get together and vote so we can stop what's going on, because they are taking us back before the Reconstruction. And they're calling it Make America Great Again. America was never great. And I'm going to be quiet, but something else we need to remember. When we're teaching our children Black history, don't start with slavery. Go back beyond that. And we were kings and queens, but we were the ones. It was the Black civilizations that brought in the medicine foundation. Our medical system is based upon what was taught at Timbuktu in Africa. Our science, our mathematics program, our astronomy, not astrology, but astronomy. All of these things, science, all of that had its basis in Africa. We were part of a great people. We were the people that brought in civilization. They wouldn't have all of these great inventions and abilities to do things without the foundations that came out of Africa. So you don't have to start with slavery. They robbed us. They went in and kidnapped us and brought us here. But now that we're here, we need to work together, and we need to understand that the melanin, that our skin, that darkness, we need to find out the importance of that. You can Google it and see what the benefits of melanated skin is. Look at it. So now I'm going to stop talking, but remember that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are being eroded. And if we let these people stay in office, we won't have any rights, because they're going to take us back to the original Constitution where the white man was in power, and we won't be able to vote or anything. Our lives will be miserable and just as close to slavery as they can get us. And some say they might even put us in concentration camps or ship us to Africa. But whatever, we need to fight for the rights, because it was on the backs of our ancestors that this country was built. And we're not going to just let us put us out of here. So your way to fight is with the vote, and teach your young children that they must vote. College students, you must vote. No matter how strict the voter suppression laws are, we must hang in there and vote anyway. So thank you for letting me share this little information with you about why we should vote. But it's very important, more important than ever, that we vote.
We also have the coloring book club for children. I'd like to share that with you. Thank you, Ms. Helen Johnson, for explaining 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment. But this is a coloring book by the Black Heritage Society that we put together for children, and maybe 3 years old up till maybe the 6th grade. And what we're doing is letting them learn about Dr. Martin Luther King. Also explaining to them about voting, about the Civil Rights Act that was passed in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act that was passed in 1965. And do you know what age you vote? If you said 18, you're correct. So this coloring book talks about voting, Dr. Martin Luther King, and how to cast your ballot. So this is a coloring book that helps support Black Heritage Society, as well as it inform and educate or provide information to those children. So please go to our website. That's www.blackheritagesociety.net and start ordering some of our coloring book club. We have a bookmarker, we have a Black Heritage button that you'll receive, and a pack of colors. So you'll find it very fun activity. We can even print your name on the coloring book. So again, call 281-405-0006 or visit the Black Heritage Society.